No one could touch this bull until this boy came. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Ranch in Montana when Robert Sullivan discovered that his prize bull Thunder had injured another ranch hand. This was the fourth incident in 2 months, and Robert was running out of options. The massive 1,200-pound Angus bull had become increasingly aggressive since his previous handler, an experienced cowboy named Jake Morrison, had left suddenly for a job in Colorado. The latest victim was Tommy Martinez, Mrs. Martinez's nephew, who had been working summers at the ranch for 3 years. Tommy was an experienced hand who knew cattle behavior, but Thunder had caught him off guard while he was repairing a section of fence near the bull's pen. The animal had charged without warning, his massive head connecting with Tommy's shoulder and sending the young man tumbling into the fence posts. Fortunately, Tommy's injuries were limited to bruises and a dislocated shoulder, but it could have been much worse. Robert stood in Dr. Hayes' office in town watching as she examined x-rays of Tommy's shoulder on the light board. "He's lucky," she said, pointing to the images. "A few inches lower, and Thunder could have broken ribs or punctured a lung. This bull is becoming too dangerous to keep Robert. Someone's going to get seriously hurt." But Thunder wasn't just any bull. He was the product of years of careful breeding with bloodlines worth more than Robert's truck and tractor combined. His offspring commanded premium prices at auction, and his stud fees had been keeping the ranch financially afloat since Sarah's medical bills had drained their savings. Selling Thunder would solve the immediate safety problem, but it would create a much larger financial crisis. Robert stood at the fence watching Thunder pace restlessly in his pen. At 62 years old, Robert had been running cattle for over 3 decades, but he'd never encountered an animal quite like this one. Thunder wasn't just aggressive, he was smart, calculating, and seemed to hold grudges against anyone who had crossed him. The veterinarian, Dr. Patricia Hayes, had examined the bull multiple times and found nothing physically wrong. The problem was behavioral, and it was getting worse. That afternoon, a social worker's car pulled up the dusty drive leading to the ranch house. Robert watched from his office window as a woman in a professional suit stepped out, followed by a small boy who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The child clutched a worn backpack and looked around the vast Montana landscape with wide, curious eyes. The social worker, Ms. Jennifer Adams, explained the situation to Robert on the front porch, while the boy sat quietly on the steps, clutching a small stuffed elephant that looked well loved and slightly frayed. The child's name was Michael Thompson, and he was the son of Robert's late wife, Sarah's distant cousin Emma Thompson. Ms. Adams had a thick file in her lap containing Michael's history, the tragic car accident on a rain-slicked highway 3 months ago that had claimed both his parents instantly, the unsuccessful attempts to locate suitable relatives, and the boy's quiet resilience through foster homes that couldn't provide permanent placement. Emma had been an artist. Sarah had mentioned her occasionally, usually when she received Christmas cards, with photos of little Michael growing up hundreds of miles away in Oregon. Sarah had always said they should visit more often, but life on the ranch was demanding, and the years had slipped by without those connections being strengthened. Now Robert wished desperately that they had made more effort to maintain family ties. Michael's father, David Thompson, had been a park ranger who specialized in wildlife rehabilitation. According to Ms. Adams' notes, Michael had grown up surrounded by injured animals that his father was helping to heal, orphaned deer, injured birds of prey, even a young bear cub that had been separated from its mother. The boy had learned early that gentleness and patience were the keys to helping creatures that were afraid and hurting. Mrs. Dorothy Martinez, who had been with the family for nearly 20 years, listened from the kitchen doorway. She had been Sarah's best friend long before she became their housekeeper, and she remembered the few times Emma had visited with baby Michael. She recalled Sarah's delight in holding the infant and how she had confided her sadness about never having children of her own. Dorothy also remembered Sarah's excitement whenever they received updates about Michael's development, his first words, his first steps, his apparent fascination with every animal he encountered. Robert felt a familiar weight settle on his chest. He'd lost Sarah 5 years ago to cancer, and the grief had never fully lifted. The ranch had become his refuge, a place where he could lose himself in work and avoid the empty rooms that still echoed with memories. The last thing he wanted was the responsibility of raising a child, especially one who reminded him of everything he'd lost. Mrs. Martinez stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. At 58, she was a sturdy woman with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen Robert through his darkest days. She had raised 4 children of her own and knew exactly what she was looking at, a scared little boy who needed stability and love. "Mr. Sullivan," she said firmly, "this child needs a home, and this house needs life in it again." Robert wanted to argue, but something in Mrs. Martinez's tone stopped him. She had been Sarah's closest friend and had never steered him wrong. Michael spent his first week at the ranch quietly observing everything around him. He was a thin boy, with sandy brown hair and green eyes that seemed to take in every detail. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, and Robert found himself unsure how to connect with someone so young. Mrs. Martinez did her best to make the boy comfortable preparing his favorite foods and setting up a room that had once been Sarah's craft space. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Michael disappeared from the house. Mrs. Martinez searched everywhere: the barn, the equipment shed, even the old storm cellar. She was about to call Robert in from the fields when she heard a low, rumbling sound coming from Thunder's pen. What she saw when she reached the fence made her heart stop. Michael was sitting cross-legged in the dirt just inside Thunder's enclosure, no more than 3 feet from the massive bull. Thunder, who had charged at every ranch hand who dared approach his pen, stood perfectly still, his head lowered as if listening to something only he could hear. The boy was talking quietly, his small hands moving expressively as he spoke. Mrs. Martinez called out softly, afraid that any sudden movement might trigger the bull's aggression. "Michael, honey, come away from there slowly." But Michael turned and waved at her with a smile, the first real smile she'd seen from him since his arrival. "It's okay, Mrs. Martinez," he called back. "Thunder's not mean. He's just sad and lonely like I was." The bull snorted gently and moved closer to the boy, who reached out and placed his small hand on the animal's massive nose. Mrs. Martinez ran to get Robert, who was in the equipment barn, repairing a broken gate. "Mr. Sullivan, you need to see this. Right now," she said, her voice urgent but not panicked. Robert followed her to Thunder's pen, expecting to see some kind of emergency. Instead, he witnessed something that defied everything he knew about animal behavior. Michael had somehow convinced Thunder to lie down, and the boy was now sitting against the bull's massive flank, still talking quietly. Thunder's eyes were half closed in contentment, an expression Robert had never seen on the animal's face. Every few minutes the bull would turn his head to look at Michael, as if acknowledging something the boy had said. "This is impossible," Robert muttered, climbing the fence for a better view. Thunder's ears flicked toward the movement, but the bull didn't show any signs of aggression. If anything, he seemed protective of the small boy leaning against him. "Michael," Robert called out, trying to keep his voice calm. "I need you to come out of there slowly, son." The word "son" slipped out before he could stop it, and he saw Michael's face light up at the endearment. "Can I stay a few more minutes?" Michael asked. "Thunder was telling me about when he was little and how he used to play with the other calves before they got sold." Robert exchanged glances with Mrs. Martinez. The boy was clearly using his imagination, but there was something about the way Thunder responded to him that couldn't be easily explained. The bull had been hand-raised on the ranch and had indeed been separated from his playmates as he grew larger and more valuable. Dr. Hayes arrived an hour later for a scheduled checkup on Thunder, expecting to find the same aggressive animal she'd been monitoring for months. Instead, she found the bull calmly allowing Michael to brush his coat, while Robert and Mrs. Martinez watched from outside the pen. "In 30 years of veterinary practice, I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Hayes said, shaking her head in amazement. "This animal has been a danger to everyone on this ranch, and now he's acting like a gentle giant with a 6-year-old boy." That evening, Robert sat Michael down for a serious conversation. "Son, I need you to understand that Thunder is a very large, very strong animal. Even if he doesn't mean to hurt you, he could accidentally step on you or knock you down." Michael nodded solemnly. "I know he's big, Mr. Sullivan, but he promised he'd be careful around me. He told me he remembers being little and how scared he was when the other calves left. He doesn't want me to be scared like that." Robert studied the boy's earnest face. There was no hint of deception or childish fantasy. Michael genuinely believed he could communicate with Thunder in some way, and given what Robert had witnessed, he was beginning to wonder if the boy might be right. Dr. Hayes suggested they conduct a controlled experiment. With Michael's permission, she wanted to observe the interaction between boy and bull under safe conditions, with multiple safety precautions in place. Robert agreed, though every instinct told him he was making a mistake. The next morning, they set up a controlled environment in a smaller pen adjacent to Thunder's main enclosure. Michael entered the pen, while Robert, Mrs. Martinez, and Dr. Hayes watched from outside, ready to intervene if necessary. Two of Robert's most experienced ranch hands stood by with ropes and poles, though Robert prayed they wouldn't be needed. Thunder approached the fence separating him from Michael and began making soft rumbling sounds that Robert had never heard before. Michael responded by placing his hands on the fence and making similar sounds, though much quieter. Within minutes, Thunder was pressing his massive head against the fence, trying to get closer to the boy. "May I go in with him now?" Michael asked politely. Robert's every instinct screamed no, but Dr. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Let's try it," she said. "But," slowly and with all of us ready to act if needed. Robert opened the gate between the pens, and Thunder immediately moved toward Michael. But instead of the aggressive charge everyone expected, the bull approached slowly, his head low in a submissive posture. When he reached Michael, he gently nuzzled the boy's shoulder, and then, to everyone's amazement, lowered himself to the ground, in a lying position. Michael settled beside Thunder and began talking quietly about his parents, his new home, and how he hoped they could be friends. Thunder listened with an attention that seemed almost human, occasionally snorting softly or shifting position to get more comfortable. "This defies everything I know about animal psychology," Dr. Hayes whispered to Robert. "That bull is not just tolerating the boy, he's actively seeking his companionship." Over the following weeks, Michael and Thunder's friendship deepened in ways that amazed everyone on the ranch. The boy developed a strict routine of visiting Thunder every morning before breakfast and every evening before dinner. He would bring fresh water in a bright blue bucket, check on Thunder's food supply, examine the fence for any needed repairs, and spend time simply talking to the massive animal about everything and nothing. Robert found himself watching these interactions with a mixture of wonder and concern. He'd grown up around cattle and thought he understood their behavior, but Michael seemed to operate on a completely different level. The boy appeared to instinctively know what Thunder needed: when he was thirsty, when he wanted attention, when he preferred to be left alone to graze, and even when the weather was about to change and Thunder might need shelter. Mrs. Martinez began documenting these interactions in a journal, partly because she found them fascinating, and partly because she suspected they might be important someday. She noted how Thunder would position himself near the fence when Michael's usual visiting time approached, how the bull's demeanor changed from watchful alertness to relaxed contentment the moment Michael appeared, and how Thunder seemed to actively communicate through body language that the boy understood intuitively. The most remarkable change was Thunder's behavior during feeding time. Previously, the bull had been aggressive and territorial about his food, charging at anyone who approached his feed trough. With Michael present, Thunder would calmly step aside and allow the boy to check his water and adjust his hay. The bull even learned to back away from the fence when Michael gestured, giving the boy space to perform his daily inspection of the pen area. Dr. Hayes made regular visits to monitor Thunder's health and behavior, documenting the dramatic changes in her veterinary notes. She observed that Thunder's stress indicators, rapid breathing, aggressive posturing, constant pacing, had virtually disappeared since Michael's arrival. The bull's appetite had improved, his coat was shinier, and his overall physical condition was better than it had been in months. More remarkably, Thunder's behavior toward other ranch hands began to improve. While he still wouldn't allow strangers near him, he stopped charging at the fence when familiar workers approached. It was as if Michael's presence had a calming effect that extended beyond their direct interactions. Word of the unusual friendship began to spread throughout the local ranching community. Other cattle ranchers started visiting Riverside Ranch, hoping to witness the boy who could tame an aggressive bull. Robert was initially reluctant to allow these visits, but Michael seemed to enjoy demonstrating his connection with thunder. During one such visit, a rancher named Bill Patterson brought his own problem animal, a horse that had become unmanageable, after a traumatic accident. The horse, a beautiful mare named Stella, had been spooked by a snake and had thrown her rider, breaking the man's leg. Since then, she had refused to allow anyone near her. Michael spent an hour sitting quietly near Stella's pen, not trying to touch her or force interaction. He simply talked to her in the same gentle tone he used with thunder, explaining that he understood being scared and how sometimes bad things happen to good animals and people. Gradually, Stella approached the fence where Michael sat. By the end of the hour, she was allowing him to stroke her nose through the fence rails. Bill Patterson was so impressed that he asked if Michael might be willing to work with Stella on a regular basis. This gave Robert an idea. If Michael had a genuine gift for calming difficult animals, perhaps they could turn this ability into something that would benefit both the boy and the ranch. He discussed the possibility with Mrs. Martinez and Dr. Hayes, who both encouraged him to explore the option. Robert approached Michael carefully about the idea of helping other animals. "Son, would you be interested in spending time with animals that are scared or upset, like Thunder was when you first met him?" Michael's eyes lit up with excitement. "Could I really help them? Thunder told me that lots of animals get scared when they don't understand what's happening to them." "Well, we could try it and see how it goes," Robert said, "but it would mean more responsibility for you, and you'd have to promise to always follow safety rules." Thus began Michael's unofficial career as an animal behaviorist at age 6. Dr. Hayes helped Robert establish safety protocols, and Mrs. Martinez made sure Michael understood the importance of adult supervision. Word spread quickly through the ranching community about the boy who could calm problem animals. Cases started arriving regularly from across Montana and neighboring states. Horses that had developed fear of trailers after accidents, cattle that had become aggressive after medical procedures, even farm dogs that had become overly protective of their territory. Michael approached each case with the same patient, intuitive method he'd used with Thunder, but he developed specific techniques for different types of animals and situations. For horses with trailer phobia, Michael would spend hours simply sitting near the trailer, talking quietly while the horse observed from a safe distance. He never forced interaction or tried to lead the horse closer. Instead, he would share stories about his own experiences with being scared of new places, describing how Thunder had helped him feel safe when everything seemed overwhelming. Gradually, the horses would approach on their own terms, eventually allowing Michael to guide them into the trailer without restraint or force. Cattle that had become aggressive after medical procedures required a different approach. Michael observed that these animals often associated human contact with pain or discomfort from injections or examinations. He would spend time simply being present in their space, without making any demands, allowing them to approach him when they felt ready. He developed a technique of humming softly the same melody Sarah used to sing while cooking, which seemed to have a universally calming effect on agitated animals. His success rate was remarkable and attracted attention from veterinary colleges across the country. Animals that had been written off as dangerous or untrainable often showed improvement within hours of meeting Michael. Dr. Hayes began inviting colleagues to observe these sessions, leading to research opportunities and documentation of Michael's methods in veterinary journals. The ranch established a formal consultation program, with Robert handling the business aspects, while Michael focused on the animals. They built a specialized facility with observation areas where veterinary students could watch and learn without interfering with Michael's work. The program generated significant income, but more importantly, it provided hope for animal owners who had exhausted traditional training methods. Word spread through professional networks, and soon Riverside Ranch was receiving requests from as far away as California and Texas. Celebrity horse owners, professional rodeo contractors, and even zoo officials sought Michael's help with animals that had developed behavioral problems. The boy who had arrived with nothing but a stuffed elephant had become one of the most sought-after animal behaviorists in the western United States, all before his 8th birthday. Robert found himself learning as much from Michael as he was teaching him. The boy's approach to problem-solving was completely different from traditional methods. Where most handlers would use restraint or dominance to control difficult animals, Michael used patience and empathy. "Animals are like people," Michael explained to Robert one evening after successfully calming a bull that had been terrorizing a neighboring ranch. "When they're mean, it's usually because something hurt them or scared them. They just need someone to listen and help them feel safe again." The insight struck Robert as profound, especially coming from someone so young. He began to see parallels between Michael's approach to animals and how the boy himself had needed patience and understanding when he first arrived at the ranch. As months passed, Michael's reputation grew beyond the local ranching community. Dr. Hayes began documenting his methods and sharing them with colleagues at veterinary conferences. Agricultural colleges sent students to observe his techniques, though none seemed able to replicate his natural ability. The ranch also began to prosper in unexpected ways. The fees from Michael's animal consultations provided additional income. But more importantly, the ranch became known as a place where difficult animals could find peace. This attracted attention from animal welfare organizations and even some celebrity horse owners who were willing to pay premium rates for Michael's services. Through all of this success, Thunder remained Michael's closest companion and partner. The massive bull seemed to understand his role as a calming influence on other animals. During particularly challenging cases, Michael would bring the visiting animal near Thunder's pen, and the bull's serene presence would often help ease the newcomer's anxiety. Robert marveled at how much his life had changed since Michael's arrival. The empty house that had echoed with loneliness now rang with the boy's laughter and endless questions about ranch life. Mrs. Martinez hummed while she cooked, delighted to have a child to spoil again. Even the ranch hands seemed happier taking pride in working at a place that had gained such positive notoriety. One evening, as Robert and Michael sat on the porch watching Thunder graze peacefully in his pen, the boy turned to him with a serious expression. "Mr. Sullivan, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. Do you think my parents would be proud of what I'm doing here?" The question caught Robert off guard, and he felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Michael, I think your parents would be incredibly proud of the young man you're becoming. You have a gift that brings peace to animals and joy to people. That's something very special." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Thunder says that people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts and watch over us. Do you think that's true?" Robert looked out at the vast Montana sky, thinking of Sarah and how much she would have loved this remarkable boy. "I think Thunder is very wise," he said softly, "and I think the people who love us want us to be happy and use our gifts to help others." That night, Robert made a decision that had been building in his heart for months. The next morning, he contacted his lawyer about beginning formal adoption proceedings for Michael. The boy had brought life purpose and joy back to Riverside Ranch in ways Robert never could have imagined. When he told Michael about his decision, the boy's reaction was everything Robert had hoped for. Michael threw his arms around Robert's neck and whispered, "Does this mean I can stay here forever, with you and Mrs. Martinez and Thunder?" "Forever and always, son," Robert replied, meaning every word. The adoption was finalized 6 months later, in a ceremony attended by Dr. Hayes' neighboring ranchers, and even some of the veterinary students who had come to study Michael's methods. Thunder wore a ribbon around his neck for the occasion, a touch that made everyone laugh, and had clearly been Michael's idea. The local newspaper sent a photographer to document the unusual family that had captured the community's imagination. Judge Margaret Wilson, who had overseen hundreds of adoption cases in her career, later said it was one of the most moving ceremonies she had ever conducted. When she asked Michael if he understood what adoption meant, the boy's response brought tears to many eyes. "It means Mr. Sullivan promises to love me forever, like Thunder promised to be my friend forever, and I promise to be the best son I can be." Robert had his lawyer draw up a will that left the ranch to Michael, ensuring that the boy would always have a home, regardless of what the future might bring. He also established a trust fund, using proceeds from Michael's consultation work, guaranteeing that the boy would have financial security for college and beyond. As Michael grew older, his gift only seemed to strengthen and evolve. He began keeping detailed journals of his interactions with different animals, developing techniques that Dr. Hayes incorporated into her veterinary practice. These journals became the foundation for what would later become a revolutionary approach to animal psychology. Several universities expressed interest in studying his methods when he became old, enough for college, with some offering full scholarships if he would agree to participate in research programs. Michael's academic abilities proved to match his intuitive gifts. He excelled in school, particularly in biology and environmental science, but he also showed talent in writing and communication. His teachers marveled at his essays about animal behavior, which demonstrated insights typically found only in graduate-level research. He won several state-level science fair competitions with projects documenting his techniques and their effectiveness across different animal species. The boy also developed leadership skills, organizing school fundraisers for animal shelters and speaking at 4-H clubs about responsible animal care. His reputation extended beyond his work with problem animals to general advocacy for humane treatment of livestock and wildlife. He testified before the state legislature about proposed animal welfare legislation, becoming the youngest person ever to address the Montana State Senate on agricultural policy. But Michael's greatest joy remained his daily time with Thunder. Every morning and evening, regardless of weather or other obligations, he spent time with the bull who had been his first friend at Riverside Ranch. Thunder, now well into his prime years, seemed to understand the importance of these rituals and would wait by the fence for Michael's arrival. The ranch continued to thrive both financially and as a haven for animals in need. Robert had never imagined that taking in one scared little boy would transform not only his own life, but create a legacy that would touch countless animals and families. Visitors often asked Robert what he thought made Michael so special. His answer was always the same: that boy has something most of us lose as we grow up, the ability to listen with his heart instead of his head. Animals know the difference, and they trust him because he genuinely cares about their well-being more than controlling them. Years later, when Michael graduated from high school as valedictorian and announced his intention to study veterinary medicine with a focus on animal behavior, Robert felt a pride deeper than anything he'd ever experienced. The scared little boy, who had arrived with nothing but a worn backpack, had grown into a confident young man with a clear purpose in life. The graduation ceremony was held at the local high school, but Michael's achievement drew attention far beyond the small Montana community. Representatives from several prestigious universities attended, hoping to recruit him for their programs. Dr. Hayes, now in her 70s but still practicing, served as the keynote speaker and dedicated her remarks to Michael's inspirational journey. During his valedictorian speech, Michael spoke about the importance of understanding rather than controlling, whether dealing with animals or people. He credited Thunder with teaching him that trust must be earned through patience and consistency, lessons that had guided him through his academic career and personal relationships. The audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes, with many wiping away tears as they remembered the shy boy who had arrived at Riverside Ranch over a decade earlier. Thunder, now an elderly bull but still gentle and dignified, remained Michael's closest confidant and inspiration. The bond between them had never weakened, and Michael often credited Thunder with teaching him that communication transcends words when it's rooted in genuine understanding and respect. Even as Thunder aged and moved more slowly, he still positioned himself by the fence each morning and evening, waiting for Michael's visits with the same patient devotion he had shown for years. As Thunder grew older, Michael spent even more time with him, understanding that their years together were precious and limited. He documented Thunder's aging process, noting how the bull's needs changed and adapting his care accordingly. These observations became part of Michael's senior research project on geriatric animal care, which was later published in a veterinary journal and cited by researchers studying animal longevity. The story of Michael and Thunder spread far beyond Montana, inspiring articles in national magazines and even a documentary film about the boy who could speak to animals. National Geographic featured their story in a special issue about human-animal bonds, and the Discovery Channel produced a 1-hour special documenting Michael's techniques and their scientific basis. But for those who lived and worked at Riverside Ranch, The real miracle wasn't the fame or recognition, it was witnessing firsthand how love and patience could transform both animals and humans in the most unexpected ways. The ranch had become a pilgrimage site for animal lovers, behaviorists, and anyone seeking hope that difficult situations could be transformed through understanding and compassion. Robert established the Sarah Sullivan Memorial Foundation in his late wife's honor, using proceeds from Michael's work to provide scholarships for students studying veterinary medicine and animal behavior. The foundation also supported research into humane animal training methods and funded programs that brought animal therapy to hospitals and nursing homes throughout the region. Mrs. Martinez, now in her 70s, still lived at the ranch and continued to document the daily miracles she witnessed. Her journals had grown into several volumes, chronicling not just Michael's development, but the transformation of the entire ranch community. Publishers had approached her about turning her observations into a book, but she insisted that the story wasn't finished yet. Michael still had much to accomplish. On quiet evenings, Robert would sit on the porch and watch Michael in Thunder's pen, still talking quietly to his old friend. The sight never failed to remind him that sometimes the most profound gifts come disguised as the heaviest burdens, and that opening your heart to love, even when it seems impossible, can change everything in ways you never dreamed possible. The Sima Ranch continued to attract visitors from around the world, but Michael never lost sight of the simple truth that had guided him from the beginning: every animal, no matter how difficult or damaged, deserves understanding and compassion. Thunder had taught him that lesson on his first day at Riverside Ranch, and it remained the foundation of everything he would accomplish in the years to come. As Michael prepared to leave for college, he made arrangements to return every weekend to care for Thunder and continue his work with the most challenging cases. The university he had chosen was only a 3-hour drive away, close enough that he could maintain his responsibilities at the ranch while pursuing his studies. He had already been accepted into an accelerated program that would allow him to complete both his undergraduate degree and veterinary training in 6 years instead of 8. The night before Michael left for college, he spent several hours with Thunder, reflecting on their journey together and making promises about the future. Thunder listened with the same attention he had shown that first day when a scared little boy had entered his pen and offered friendship instead of dominance. As the stars appeared over the Montana sky, Michael knew that no matter how far his education and career might take him, Riverside Ranch would always be home, and Thunder would always be the friend who had taught him that love and understanding could overcome any obstacle.